Struggling to stay up to date with social media? Do you want to get ahead online? You're in the right place. Welcome to the Public Sector Marketing Show, the podcast for public sector professionals who want to elevate their digital communications. Here's your host, Joanne Sweeney.
Hello and welcome to Season 6 and Episode 102 of the Public Sector Marketing Show. The rules of PR are changing so fast, faster than we can say the word transformation. But in today's show, I want to take a deep dive into our work as public relations professionals, how we engage target audiences and get them to know, like, and to trust us. It's becoming more difficult for sure with the rise of misinformation, AI, now we have deep fake, and all of that revolutionizing how we get the attention and the trust of our online audiences. So I'm going to try and unpack how we revive our PR skills in the digital age. And to help us with that, I have an interview with Nicholas Bruneau, who recently launched his debut title, Engage with Impact. So let's dive in. So in preparation for this podcast episode, I took some time to think about this question. So what are the new rules of PR, Joanne? And it brought me back to my own book, the second edition of Public Sector Marketing Pro, and in particular, Chapter 8, How to Build Trust Online. This chapter shares a series of case studies from government and public sector with anecdotes and insights from their communications managers. I start off the chapter by signaling that we must put our focus on building meaningful engagement in the digital age, as opposed to a bad habit of post and go communications. So here are 5 new rules for PR from the chapter in that book that I think all PR professionals should lean into in 2024. Starting off with number 1, I call it agility over predictability. So your public interest mandate is to serve all and not some, to being agile to respond to particular needs as opposed to engaging in predictable mass communications. Number 2, eliminating the monopolistic mindset, where you decide where your citizens or your public service users should receive information from you. Moving on to number 3, it's a more conversational world where human and emotional intelligence is seen, heard, and felt. In a world where bots and AI are increasing, it has never been more important to deliver the human touch. Number 4 is all about embracing the future of work and equipping remote teams to deliver communications in real time and out of hours times when the public need it most. And finally, 5, testing tech because resistance is futile. And using the test and learn approach, particularly around AI, let me give you a crazy stat. Europol, the European Union Agency for Law Enforcement Cooperation, undertook a research study recently, and they predict that the majority of internet content will be synthetically produced by 2026. And I've actually linked that study in the blog post associated with this podcast on our website. But that is a fascinating stat. Imagine AI producing the majority of the content on the internet in 2026. I mean, what am I going to do?
Public Sector Pros, do you want to progress in your career? Are you going for promotion? Do you want to stay ahead of the digital media landscape? We can help you. View our training calendar at publicsectormarketingpros.com.
In today's consulting segment, I'm asking the question on the behalf of PR professionals watching or listening to this episode. How do we move forward if we are stuck looking back? So in my daily work, I speak, train, coach public sector communications professionals. Very often their frustrations are around an inability to move their PR, marketing and comms forward. So it got me thinking, what are the biggest frustrations that you guys have? What are the top grievances that are keeping you stuck and keeping you looking back? And maybe it's not you. Maybe it's your leadership team. Maybe it's your line manager. Maybe it's other departments. So let's get into it. Number one, and I feel really strongly about this, you are underfunded, under-resourced, and sometimes undervalued. It really, I mean, if I'm listening to the radio, and I listen to the radio all the time, and whether it's national news, European news, or global news, and they're talking about some government, political, public sector crisis, there's always a commentator that will say the communications was bad. And, you know, when I hear that, what it speaks to me is the communications is not prioritized. The communications is a second thought. The communications is under-resourced, or those making the decisions don't have a value on communications. Because let me tell you, the communications professionals that I know working in this sector right across the world are hugely invested in delivering the best communications in the public interest. But of course, they aren't the ultimate decision makers. So number one, undervalued, under-resourced, underfunded. Okay, number two, too many chiefs, not enough cooks. And let me tell you, I should have pointed out, I am putting those grievances in my own words and paraphrasing them. So too many chiefs, not enough cooks. What does that mean? So very often, really bigger pieces of communications need to go through multiple channels beyond the communications team. And this is where the communications, in my experience, begins to get diluted. It begins to get a little bit ropey and becomes less effective. And I just wish that those people that are working in different roles within an organization would, rather than diluting it, really ask some even tough questions off your comms pros. Why are we taking this strategic approach? Why are we saying this? You know, question it, but let the comms people come back. Because very often I find that comms people sometimes don't have a right to respond. And so too many chiefs sitting in leadership roles, diluting the impact and the effectiveness of a comms plan when the cooks in the comms department are really trying their best and often under-resourced. Okay, number three is a common one, fear of public attack or online trolling. And my friends, I get it. I really get it. I see what you have to face on the front line of social media. It is not pretty. It is not nice on a human level to be in receipt of trolling or targeted abuse. But we really have to ask the question, are we making decisions about our transparent communications based on the 1% of the trolls? And if you haven't already, you need to listen to episode 4 of this podcast to talk about how to handle negativity online. Okay, let's go into number 4 of the biggest frustrations of PR pros working in government and public sector. Marketing is changing, evolving at such a fast rate. So the lack of skills and knowledge within comms and PR's teams can sometimes show gaps, and that's completely understandable. My friends, I am running trying to catch up with all this AI revolution. Number 5 is fear of change. And, you know, I would have said pre-pandemic, government and public sector were wholly conservative, but you're not conservative anymore because you really leaned into your zone of genius and proved that you could be brave and you could be agile and you did your best in the interests of the people. But sometimes I think that fear is creeping back in, probably on the back of the increase of online hate. And so taking well, we will continue to do what we've been doing for the last couple of years is a bad approach. And then finally, and it kind of links to point number 2, number 6 is what I call decision-making relay. So this is where decisions are not being made, but the baton is being handed over to another person and another person and another person. And by the time a decision is made, the question is asked, and what decision am I making here? So having astute, small decision-making teams around comms can be hugely beneficial. But I'm interested to know, what other PR challenges are you facing in government and public sector? What would you add to my 6-point list? If you've got one, send me a DM on LinkedIn. So I was delighted to interview fellow author Nicholas Bruneau, who is a communication strategist with decades of experience in the field. His expertise lies at the intersection of digital communications and purpose-led marketing. He's worked for intergovernmental agencies from the UN, the World Bank, the EU, as well as non-profits, associations, media and political groups. He has led numerous digital advocacy campaigns on international development, education, sustainability, and climate change issues. Nicholas works from his home office in Portugal, which uses 100% green electricity and reduces emissions thanks to domestic solar panels and climate impact membership. It's a brilliant interview. He talks about his brand new book, Engage with Impact. I was fortunate enough to get an early copy and to leave a review. I hope you enjoy it. Nicholas, thank you so much for joining me on the Public Sector Marketing Show.
Thank you, Joanne. It's a pleasure.
Well, congratulations on the new book. As a fellow author, I know the investment and the time that it takes to get a book to market. And then you think you're done, and then you've got to market the bloody thing. But I know that my audience will very much appreciate the work that you've put into this title. But first of all, let our listeners and viewers know a little bit about you and your work to date.
Thank you. I'm a communications consultant. Right now, I'm working with the UN, but I've been working primarily in digital advocacy, working for the World Bank, working for the European Union, different kinds of agencies, and also for associations as well. So always in digital advocacy space and social impact communications.
So we're very much aligned on the purpose of our work and the impact that we want to make. And so the title of the book, Engage with Impact, is so powerful. But what you are doing is you are making it effectively a practical guide, because it's 5 steps to transform your digital communications for social impact. Who is the book aimed at?
So it's essentially aimed at communications managers and directors that are responsible for communications in a nonprofit and associations, so intergovernmental organizations, and are looking for inspiration of what their peers are already doing in the digital space. So they can, I think that there's a lot of books out there that are marketing books or communications books, but don't have those practical examples from the NGOs, from the intergovernmental organizations. We have a lot of private sector examples from other books. So I wanted to have a book that really showed, okay, what are we doing and what are some of the success stories?
And you're absolutely right, because success for a private sector company is significantly different for an NGO. And it really is all about that reach and that engagement and that spurring, citizens to behavior change or perception change. And in a world where we have 1,500 posts into our newsfeed every day, the attention economy is hard to break through. But this book has been a number of years in the making, right? And it started off by you doing a little bit of research and asking marketing and comms professionals what their challenges were. So what did you find when you did that initial research?
So the initial research was just after the pandemic. And so it was really eye-opening to see that over 80% said that they had become more agile following the pandemic. So it really got me to think, okay, how have they become agile? And I was thankful that there were quite a few comments. So I had left part of the survey open so that people could add their comments and give their insights. And that's what really made the book at the beginning, where I realized there's a treasure trove of information here. And from that, also, they told me that their main challenge was engagement, was getting engagement online. So that's why where the name of the book came out, which was, impact, engage with impact. And then from that, then I tried to sort of interview more communications directors to see how are they doing, to dive deeper into the subject matter, and then to develop the agile framework that is featured in the book.
So tell me about the agile framework. I'm a process person too, and everything I do for myself or create for clients is in steps. So you've got those 5 steps. Tell us about them.
Exactly. What I tried to do is do something that is going to be from the inside out. So first, part of the agile framework, the A is adopt a startup mentality. So what that means is really starting from the inside, developing a vision. So I looked at how do startups work? What are some of the ways that they are agile? And trying to find examples then from public sector marketing pros or communication directors to see how they're developing or defining a vision across their organization for communication. So that's the A of agile. The G is to go digital first. And you've alluded to it many times in your podcast, where I think that there's friction involved as far as how fast a lot of communications teams and organization can move, whether it's on video, whether it's to develop content that relates to the news, whether it's also to collaborate or to change the way that they're doing their PR. So I looked at different examples of how organizations are using digital in a very sort of concrete way. I give the example of the Global Partnership for Education that had to do a global campaign that was purely digital. So they had to completely pivot and develop microsites and develop a campaign that originally wasn't going to be completely virtual, but then they changed it that way. So I'm trying to use that kind of stories to try to showcase, what people are doing. Then after that, the I is inspire with personal stories. So there I give the example of how the World Food Program was that the CEO was really taking a frontline approach and talking about how the situation needed more funding and had a campaign for billionaires to be more active. And so I give different kind of insights as to how people can tell more personal stories, how they can connect online with more authentic stories, and then as well maybe to use virtual influencers, so different trends that are going on right now, so that organizations can use a personal touch. So it can also include recruiting brand ambassadors. It doesn't have to be a big influencer. It can even be internally, where you develop expertise with your staff and have employee advocacy as well. So these different kinds of strategies that allow you to tell more personal stories. We know that people connect much more with people than they do with organizations. So it's the strategies to try to develop that. I don't know if you wanted me to go into all the other two.
Yeah, please do.
Okay,
Please do.
yeah, I don't. So the L is for leverage your content, and that's all about repurposing and how you can repurpose your content, whether it's reports, whether it's events. So I'll give the example there of the Don't Choose Extinction campaign by the UNDP, where they basically created a whole year of content from one piece, but then developed that in a strategy that was over a year of great content around a key issue. And then finally, the Empower Your Community is really about, tapping into your community virtually. So the example there is of the Malala Fund that has created an award-winning newsletter that isn't just talking about what girls are doing, but having girls really participate, write, and to really activate that community online. So they've been very successful doing that. Another example there is Patagonia, where they have been working with NGOs on numerous issues, and for example, the Vjosa River, where they were actively campaigning online with a petition. So basically, how that collaboration can then really have ripple effects online, and I would go far as saying that this is essential nowadays if you want success, to be able to collaborate with others, to be able to really work with uncommon partners. So not always the same people, the same organizations, but to really go outside of your comfort zone.
So it's election year, and more than half the world's population will go to the polls. And we know from previous elections that social media is a great driver to disrupt political communications and sway voters and influence them. Now we've got AI and deep fake. But how can you cut through the noise and decipher the truth from mistruths? What's your advice for those working in public affairs right now, this year in particular?
Yeah, I mean, we're seeing, for example, I think this week or last week, the European Parliament going on TikTok for the first time. Their comms lead talking about how, for the first time, they are working with influencers and surrendering control of the message. So this is one thing that I talk about in the book, which is the challenge of working with influencers while at the same time, allowing them to create that content without you controlling the message. But that's the way that you're going to be able to connect in an authentic way with those the followers of that influencer. So for the first time, we're seeing the European Parliament doing that. It's essential, I think, for organizations to really up their game as far as trying to not just have their institutional voice, but to really, develop those kinds of collaborative partnerships. And, at the same time, I think that it's all about, for example, working in a network and trying to sort of have those voices speak in a different way, and not just with the same message.
What's really tricky for comms pros, and I'm not sure if you find this too, but the people that I work with, they are underfunded and overworked, and they're expected to do more with less. And then you have people like you and me coming in and trying to give them the A to Z, or the 1 to 5 in your case, of great digital comms. But I get completely frustrated that comms is underfunded, because, they mitigate disasters, comms pros, but they also, as you say, empower and engage, a public that might be disaffected. Is it your experience that it's still the case that comms departments and functions are still underfunded and underresourced?
It is so. I mean, I remember one of your podcasts where I think it was World Health Organization that had still a very small team. They're really punching above their weight. I'm right now, the team that I'm in the UN, there is no team. I'm basically a support staff, and I'm supporting technical staff, and so you're working with very little resources, very few resources. So you really do have to be creative. What that means is trying to set up systems, trying to set up templates, trying to set up ways in which you can cut corners, ways in which you can make it easy for everyone to be creating content together. So that, as I mentioned, means collaborating. Another one is, for example, GPE that developed the on-message template, which is also in the book, which is really trying to sort of institutionalize, okay, what are the key issues that we need to talk about? Let's develop a template that allows everyone to be in line and to know, okay, how can we talk about this issue externally without always having to report back to so-and-so. So trying to be as agile as possible. So I think those are the kinds of things that small teams need to do. And it's, as you say, for mobile, it's, it's doing it. It's getting used to it. It's taking the time to sort of experiment and doing those kinds of experiments once in a while. Another story in the book is the nonprofit called Candid that did they decided, okay, how can we experiment with video? So they said, okay, for the next 3 months, we're going to do a short experiment. It's going to be controlled. We're going to de-risk it. So we're not going to spend all of our time. We're going to spend a specific amount of time and do a specific amount of posts and see what happens and see what works. So there you're able to, evolve with these kinds of experiments. And the last thing that I'll say is, I think that in public sector, we are too scared of failure. So, and that's the problem. If we don't fail, we don't innovate. And if we're not creative, then we're going to keep doing the same thing. And as I said in the book as well, if you keep doing the same thing, you'll keep getting the same results. And that is, that is a motto that I live by. And it's the way that I met my wife was essentially by changing the way that I was meeting people. And I think that you really need to change the way that you communicate, or at least to experiment and see what are the different ways in which you can do something, and to have a bit more of an acceptance of failure, and to be able to have controlled failures, if I can put it that way.
I love that anecdote about your wife. That's a whole other podcast on dating, Nicholas. You're going to have to pitch that story somewhere else. Brilliant. But listen, the book also comes with a guide, right? You sent me the guide and I was like, this is amazing. Does everyone who invests in the book get that guide as well?
Exactly. What I wanted to do is, I didn't want it to be a book that just sits on your shelf. I wanted to have something that was going to be helpful and would actually, help you to change your communications. So first, one of the comments that I had was that the checklists that are in the book should be, available, should be made available. So then, following those comments, then I put together the toolkits with the checklists. And then I thought, well, I'm just not going to leave the checklist just like that. How can I encourage people to then use those checklists and be inspired by those to try to find, a few things that they can then develop themselves in their communications team. And so I'm trying to help them to narrow it down to at least one thing. I think that we all have so much to do. We all have so many priorities. What is one thing that they can then take away from this book? And if I'm able to do that, then at least, it's been a success.
Well, I've been very fortunate to get an advanced copy and have the opportunity to read it and to leave you a review. which appears in the book. And I think I'll just share it with listeners and viewers. So
Mhm.
I say this no nonsense advocacy how-to guide is a must-read and permanent desk resource for those trying to make an impact in the world. Now more than ever, we need social change makers to be equipped with practical digital age communication skills. 5 stars from me. And Nicholas, I just want to congratulate you on the book and for taking the time and the effort to bring it to market. I'll keep championing what you're doing. And I certainly think that those that are listening to it should go and grab a copy. So where can people go and grab a copy?
Well, it's very simple. It's the website is engagewithimpact.com. So they'll be able to either buy the book or to download the Reader's Guide, which is an overview of the Agile framework.
Amazing. Well, listen, continued success. Thank you so much for your insights today, and I've no doubt that we'll talk again.
If you're struggling with digital PR, communications more broadly, don't forget that I have our 3 accredited programs on our website that you can take on demand. And if you choose to take them on demand, you also get live one-to-one or group coaching with me. And the output of taking these programs, apart from your own continuing professional development, a professional industry qualification, you also get a strategy for your own workplace. So be sure to check those out on our brand new website, publicsectormarketingpros.com. If you haven't already shared this podcast with a public sector pro you know, why not go ahead to Spotify or to iTunes or Amazon Music, wherever you get your podcast, and just WhatsApp them the link. I would appreciate it. And a final nod for my book, Public Sector Marketing Pro. It's available in hard copy from Amazon, or you can get it as an audiobook on Audible. But for now, thank you so much for tuning in, and I will see you on the next episode.
If you enjoyed this episode, please share with a public sector pro you know. Don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review on your favorite podcast platform or on YouTube. For more free resources, details of our upcoming training courses and consulting options, log on to publicsectormarketingpros.com.